Welcome to another segment of provocative conversations destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Hello, I am Mr. Provocateur, the proud heretic. I am continuing on in the subtopic regarding the church from the prophetic utterances that I received from God. Again, I say to you, because I have no other way in putting it, all I can say is I received it from God. I know that I did not receive this from myself and of myself. I also know that as a human being, I could very well miss it at points. Yet I do not use my humanity as an excuse or as a cloak for maliciousness or deception. I am not trying to gain any points in the kingdom, so-called kingdom. I am not trying to gain any points in the world or with the world's systems. I am just putting forth what God spoke to me in the most clear and the most accurate manner in which I can, by which I can, from where I stand in both my humanity and from where I stand in my spiritual state at the times that I heard from God regarding this divine season of the pandemic, hearing according to what it is that God is doing and what God is saying. So here I am putting forth what I heard in my hearings throughout 22 different times. Today makes 23 different times, but perhaps I will not add what I heard today. I will sit on that for a bit, and I may add it as an extra to all else. And I'm sure that God will continue to unfold and give me whatever it is He's wanting to give me. Whatever it is that I'm supposed to hear and to have to share with whoever it is that I'm to share with, even if it's just to my family and those who are close to me, those who know me, and those who desire to hear whatever is going on and whatever they feel that I might have for them to hear. However that goes, it goes how it goes. I just want to get into and stay over in the flow. I just want to hear from within the flow. Well, I left off, of course, dealing with the church in a strong manner. I say again, it disturbs me that the church is not even acknowledging the type season that we're in, that the church is not even seeing the season that we're in, that the church is not even listening to the voice of God, listening out for the voice of God, the seeings of God, the scenes of God, SCENES, the things of God unfold in scenes, slides. And the church is just amazing to me that the church, those within the church, those within the systems of the church, those affiliated with the church, the diehards of the church, even the so-called prophets of the church are not hearing God. That is amazing to me. I just don't understand it. Yet at the same time, I do, but I don't. But I do. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things. It's not just one thing, either individually or across the board. It's many things across the board and individually. It's for many reasons why they don't hear and can't hear. However, we're going to move on. God says that this season will be a season of destruction, and yet the church doesn't realize it. He says that there will be destruction all around you. There will be destruction throughout industries. Industries will be destroyed and businesses will be derailed. Businesses will be dismantled. Businesses will be undone. And in all of this, because the church doesn't hear what God is saying and what God is doing, the church is still trying to run their own religious industries. They're trying to continue to cycle through all the processes that they're used to doing, all the money gimmicks that they're used to doing, all the ways in getting up offerings, whether it's through raffle tickets, through selling food, selling articles, material, revivals, name it, claim it, or put a seed on it and watch God do it, or whether it's through so-called tithes and offerings. I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry. I no longer get with tithes and offerings. Now, those of you who do, you're going to think now I'm not a person who hears from God and I'm not of God. Well, I might say the same about you, because you do go around. It's something how, watch this here. Let me say this here. And I teeter on this to a degree, because since I say things regarding the Bible, or should I say, some would say against the Bible, yet I still hold on to the principles of the Bible. You would say that I'm guilty of this as well, I'm sure. Maybe I just gave you firepower, but it doesn't matter. That wasn't by mistake. I meant to do what I'm doing right now. Many of you in the church realm, in the religious realm, and even those of you who stand outside of the church realm now, and you stand on the waysides of the church and you're looking on, yet at the same time, you yourselves are still holding on to a lot of the stuff that benefits you. A lot of the stuff you can see where it's wrong. Slaves, obey your masters. Yet at the same time, you don't see this tithe and offering thing. You don't see many people are starting to talk about this. A great number, let's put it this way, this taroma seed and all, and I know where they get it from and all, and it's been really pushed. It's been pushed. I don't know where the pushing of it began, but it's really being pushed. Those who you teach will end up teaching others the same, and it'll just keep the cycle going. And that's how we got to where we are now in everything else. But these offerings that we're doing to cause people to just, and then we justify it by whoever's at the top of the receiving, they take of theirs and then give it to somebody else. And then that makes it all right. And now everybody is happy in the kingdom, or even those outside of the kingdom. Everybody is happy in the camp. Why? And they feel good about themselves because you've done a good deed on the top, from the top down. So now everybody feels good about it and everybody makes it right. Just because it's in that book does not make it right. And no, just because it's in that book doesn't make it wrong. But come on, we're pushing and we're peddling money. And we can say, well, it's not money, it's seed. No, that's how you fix it up, and that's how you justify it. Now, those of you who benefit from these things, you will see me as who I claim to be, a heretic because it was once and several times proposed to me, or just conjectured and actually purposely placed upon me. Now I embrace it because I understand what that term truly signifies. So I embrace it. I cut the feet from up under those who would try to trample upon what I'm doing or what God is doing with me. I go ahead on and I brand myself so that you don't have space to brand me as such. So those of you who are really benefiting from the different ways of receiving monies from people, and listen, I really stand before God in a humble way in this here. Not that I've ever been caught up in that stuff, but I stand in a humble manner toward this. The longer I go, the more mature I go, the older I get, I realize more and more how much of a ploy this whole scheme regarding money is. If we're to live by faith, then those at the top should be living by faith. It's not living by faith, preacher, when you're pushing people to give you, to give into. Will God use people? Yes, he will. Does God use people? Yes, he does. But the way in which we do it, the way in which we employ all of these old tricks of old, all of these things of old, we really need to cut this stuff out. But I know you're not, and you're going to get mad at me, and you don't want to hear me now, and that's fine too, because maybe this ain't for you, and maybe, just maybe, you ain't going nowhere anyway. And if you go into the new, the question is, will this ever be in the new? And don't be giving me that verse time out. As long as there's the heavens and the earth or whatever, there will always be seed time and harvest. Yes, but that don't mean that you're the one controlling the seed or mandating the seed. Now we say it's 27 days old. Give me 27 pennies. This is the 5th day of the week. So give me 505 nickels. You say this is 2020. So we're going into 2021. So give me $2,021. But if you don't have $2,021, give me 2020 and make sure you come back with that one, but make sure that you pay a late fee on the one since you didn't give the whole of what you were supposed to give. All of this crazy stuff. This is the 4th month of the year. So give me $4.04. What? This is the 40th year of my birthday. So give me $40. And because you want to see me live to 80 so that I can keep on leading you and so God can keep on blessing you through me, give me another 40 to equal 80. In fact, some of you have 800 to give me. All of these gimmicks, this is where we're moving away from. Apparently. Those of you have a problem with me, you just have to have a problem with me. You sit here and live in your ivory towers while everyone else struggles. There's more to a seed than you putting some dollars in. There's more to a seed than what a person is giving a teacher or a prophet or a bishop or an apostle or a pastor or an evangelist. If I miss somebody else out, them too, missionary, whoever. It's more than this. And those of you who coach and con these people into this here, you know there's more to it. But you don't not necessarily care about that. Why? Because you're getting up front. You're cut off the top. What happens with those who give it, who are not whatever? Well, that's on them. That's between them and God. See, it's all about you. You're top greedy. So anyway, God says this is a season of destruction. This is a season where businesses are going to be closing. People are going to be unemployed and all of these other things. And yet, instead of us as spiritual, that we want to be spiritual fathers, we want to be considered that, we want to be spiritual mothers. My mother in the Lord, my father in the Lord, my spiritual father, my spiritual mama, my spiritual daddy, my spiritual mama. We say all of these things. And those of you at the top who they consider spiritual father, spiritual mother, here's the problem. The Bible says you do all of this to proselytize. He says, but then when you win them, you cause them to be twice the sons of hell as you yourself. They start practicing twice the amount of crap that you are panhandling and peddling, that you're teaching, that you're showing, when God is bringing us out of all of this stuff. Don't think that God is going to clean us up in every other area, but leave us wide open in that area. You're not in the church world, so you don't understand. No. Wrong answer. This is what it is. What it really is that because God kept me away from the fire, because he pulled me away from the fire, I don't smell like the smoke from the fire. When you don't smell like the smoke from the fire, nothing is clogging your nostrils or your sense of smell, so you can smell stuff more distinctly and more keenly, more accurately. When you're away from the fire, you're away from the smoke. And when you're not around the smoke of the fire, you can see clearer, because the smoke is not blocking your view. The smoke is not putting up a flank, putting up a smoke wall, a smoke screen. When I was in the military, I was a tanker. I was an M1A1 Abrams tanker. On tanks, you have little tubes or little guns on the side of the tank where you load them with grenades. And mainly you would put smoke grenades, and these smoke grenades would be deployed. When you deploy these smoke grenades, what happens is it puts up a screen. There's all different color screens, and each screen has its distinct purpose and message behind it. But you put the smoke screen up so that they won't see you moving. They won't see you. They won't see where you're directing your gun to. They won't see where the enemy actually is. It covers you. God is removing all of these smoke screens. When you stand in proximity, the closer you stand to the smoke, the screen of the smoke, the more of an effect that screen or that smoke has upon your view, what you see, and how you behave. Well, that's what's happening. So many people are so close to the smoke of the fire from the church that they are incapable of seeing what even they themselves are practicing, and the wrong in it, the twistedness in it, the witchery, the witchcraft in it, the thievery in it. Unless you stand back from the fire, the further you stand away from the fire, the more accurately you'll be able to see, the more focused you will be. God has pulled some of us away from the fire, away from the smoke. God has kept some of us away from the smoke for years. So now we're able to see what we could not see when we were there, or what we were seeing in segmented pieces when we were there, because we never fit in. So we never did get all up under the fire. We were just in the house where the fire was happening, but we were never included in the group, in the back rooms of the groups. We were never included in the number, though we were part of the number, and though our monies were definitely appreciated or accepted. But then some of us were moved away from all of that, so that we can see more clearly, so that we could hear more clearly, so that we could discern more clearly. And that's what's happening now. People such as myself, we're calling out what we see, even if you don't see it. What amazes me is that people can do stuff like that and use those money gimmicks, and God is still working in them and through them in other areas, even though what they're doing is not correct. God was still leading David and all, even though he had slept with another man's wife, even though he had her husband killed. He was still being led by God. The hand of God was still present. Saul, same thing. God was with Saul, though he was with David. I'll put it like that, and I'll leave it at that because I don't have time to go into that necessarily, not right now. And then you look at where Samson, when his hair was cut and he did not recognize that his hair was cut, the spirit had left from him, it says. He had lost his strength. He had lost his abilities. He had lost his influence. Yet God was still present with him, but he had lost that which made him unique, feared, reverenced. That's how the church is. God has moved on from the church. God has moved on from the systematic workings of the church. God has moved on from the ploys of the church. Notice how the church, they agree with moving on from the dispensation of the law, but then they don't agree with moving on from tithes and offerings, which were also within that dispensation. And I said, nah, because this one gave to Melchizedek before the law, and this one gave in the New Testament. And Paul said, yeah, and Paul also said, slaves, obey your master and don't seek to be loose. Remember that. And Jesus never walked and gave tithes to anybody, though you will say that, well, you know, he paid Caesar what was due to Caesar and gave to God what belongs to God. And yeah, because you want to make it right. And then you still don't know if the storyline of Jesus was allegorical, portions of it metaphorical, or whether any of it had any true substance in it, outside of the hidden principles and the hidden things of God regarding it all. Because you don't have any proof of it. You can bring me to crooked, tripping, cripping Israel all you want and try to tell me this way Jesus died at, this way his last pamper was taken off at and stored until the 200 AD fire inside of this town where it was burned down by the whoever's. And you could tell me all kind of stuff. And people sit there and pay thousands of dollars to go and hear that noise. And then we turned around and then TBN ended up building a kingdom, you might as well say a kingdom, building Israel and all, taking all those millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of building some religious cult following place, replica of Israel in Orlando. And then many people went flocking there and running there. People I knew, just to go, ooh, the Spirit of the Lord. What do you mean the Spirit of the Lord? You had to go there to find, ooh, and what they said about, ooh, and Jesus, ooh. Yep, and he was white, right? Yep, he had no color to him, right? And his hair was not knotty, right? Wasn't thick, right? It wasn't coarse, right? He had a beard, and a mustache. Wow. Isn't that something? And I've never been there. And yet I know that much. And then where is that place at now? All of those millions of dollars have technically gone to waste. Why? Because Jan Crouch, one of the co-founders of that TBN network. She's no longer here. Her husband is no longer here. I read some months ago that whole thing was closing down. I don't know how that actually goes. I even know the black guy from Orlando who ended up becoming the pastor of that particular location. I know him. He had the restaurant, if I'm correct, in which I believe I am. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe I am. He was a pastor of the restaurant, or I think it was called the Potter's House, or no, that's in Jacksonville, Florida. But there was a restaurant in Orlando and a church next to it. And the restaurant was called Mama Nim's. Good food. They were never consistent, but good food. And they had a nice church. And he became the pastor, if I'm correct, of the Holy Land in Orlando, built by Jan Crouch or whatever. All of those millions and millions of dollars, all of them. We sell people whatever sells. If it's tithes and offerings, you scare the hell out of them. First, you scare the hell into them. And then you try to get them to pay their way out of the fear of hell that's now in them. So you scare the hell into them, and then you scare the hell out of them by scaring them even the more to give their money. And if you don't give your money, your mama going to be cursed. Your daddy going to be cursed. Your food going to be cursed. Your clothes going to be cursed. Your purse going to be cursed. Your car's going to be cursed. And you never even thought, well, hey, how can my car be cursed and I don't even own one? But your car's going to be cursed. So now you're scared to buy a car because it might be cursed. Because what if I don't pay my tithes and offering? God's going to curse me. It curse you with a curse because you have not brought your tithes and stuff to the storehouse and all of this old crazy hocus pocus mess. And we believe in it. And I know you preachers, even some who halfway kind of accepted me and who halfway kind of, I'm hearing what he's saying and whatever. Now you're pissed off. Now you're mad. Now you're hurt. Now you don't agree with me. Why? Because I'm telling you that your gimmicks are being exposed, that this season is exposing your gimmicks, that your gimmicks are no longer going to work. Listen, if I'm talking against God, why won't he curse me down? If I'm talking against God, then why am I not cursed? And it's not about, well, you just keep on living, you're going to be cursed. Wait a minute, preacher. You stealing and tricking and doing all you doing, and you still living, and you're not cursed. And you're walking around talking about, I'm blessed and highly favored. But I'm supposed to be cursed because I'm exposing your rhetoric. I'm exposing the crap that you're peddling and panhandling. I am wrong, but somehow, preacher, you're right. Let me ask you preachers something. You apostles, you bishops, you pastors, you evangelists, you prophets, you missionaries. If you think that the tithes is such a holy thing when it's in our hands, and that you have to get up off the holies of holies and do the right thing with the holy monies that God bless you with. And if you don't, the holies become the accursed thing. Well, here's my question to you, pastors, you bishops, you apostles, you reverends, you who else? You prophets, you evangelists, you missionaries, you whoever you want to be. If it is such a blessed seed and such a God seed, and you have to do right with that God seed, or that God seed becomes the curse, why in the hell are you always going and paying your side women money to pay their bills, to buy a prettier dress, to buy a negligee, or your side man? Sir, your side man, Ma'am, your side woman. Ma'am, why are you paying them? And why are you taking the holies of holies, the money from the holies of the people, from the holies of God, and taking it and prostituting it, paying for the prostitute, praying for the dancer, praying for the lap dance? Huh? Why are you taking it and drinking it up?
Stop it right now.
Why are you taking it and smoking it up?
No, 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 no!
Huh? Why are you taking it and perverting it? Why are you taking that holy money, those holy tithes and offerings, and using it to pay for the hotel rooms that you doing all that sinning in? Looky. Anyway, let's keep moving. God says this is not a period of recovery. He says most businesses will not return. Most businesses will not recover from this season. So if you are a true father in God, or you are a true father over the people that you claim to have, and who claim that you have, nurtured them and brought them up and whatever else, and you're a true mother to these people and all of this here, why in all hell are you not sitting there and saying what the Bible says? The children ought not to lay up for the father, but the father ought to lay up for the children. You should have laid up the monies and the tithes and offerings that have come in before this pandemic, and now you should be paying it out to the people. Most of you don't have no doggone light bills no more. Most of you don't have the overhead that you once had before. Most of you have already closed out things and laid off workers. So why are you still trying to pull in the same amount of money? Huh? Because of your greed. This ain't about God. It's your greed. And if you were a good daddy, you would say to your children, look here, don't worry about what you owe me on that. Don't worry about this here. Look, God understands. God is the one who's orchestrating. Go ahead on and take that and lay that up. Because you all are going to need this for what God is showing me about what's going to happen. Why don't you say, well, you know what? If you have that conviction and your needs are right before you and whatever, and you need to do some things, do those things. Those of you who feel that, well, no, I'm good. But I got these tithes and offerings and I just feel cursed if I don't, and you just messed up over it, then all right. So that's what we do. Why don't you do this here? Why don't you find somebody in the neighborhood who is in need of food, who is in need of their bills being paid, their groceries, in need of their light bill being taken care of, their rent being taken care of, their mortgage being taken care of, their car note being taken care of. Why don't you do things like that? Or why don't you go and buy 100 good quality masks and then go give it to the proper people? Let God lead you. Why don't you do things like that? Why don't you get sanitizer, gloves? Why don't you go and purchase some things for people? Some of you may know your neighbor or your family member. They have a clean background and they are legally able to carry a gun. Why don't you go and help them to get one? Financially, why don't you help them? Why don't you help them to procure some ammunition? How could you be telling me that there? How can I not be telling you that there? These are important times we're in. Important times require important things. Let's keep talking because you messed up because the preacher done told you buy some bullets and guns. Hallelujah. I would have been fine if I would have said, go buy some BBs and some honey buns. You would have been fine. If I would have told you to go take them to the movies, Well, I always want to go to the movies, but the pastor told me it was wrong. But now that you're telling me that, preacher, I should go, and then I can make it right. Yeah, I can make it right because I go get one or two people who's in the community who want to go to the movies, and I can make it right because I had to go there with them to chaperone them because they were younger people, and I want to be there with. Well, first of all, I wouldn't tell you to go to the movies. Why? Well, most of them are closing down, I'm sure, or closed up. Why? Because of the pandemic. The pandemic. I mean, that would be one of those public places that I would not want to go. And I do know people who have been going to the theater since this. And it's like, why would you go in there and sit in the dark with all of those people with that thing? That's what I call it, that thing. You got that thing. I remember when AIDS came out in South Florida. When it came out in the 80s, man, people were like, man, she got that thing. He got that thing. He walking with that thing. Like, well, what thing? What thing? And I remember in the 60s, they had a 60s movie. It could have been a 70s, but I think it was a 60s movie. But I saw it like in the early 70s when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. It was a monster movie called The Thing. The Thing. But, that virus I call that thing. You got that thing. Sometimes you don't even say that thing. That's too proper. You got to say that thing, that DAT, that dang, that thing, THANG. You got that thing. Listen. No one should be going to the movies right now, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Because that thing being there, that's not where you want to go. You don't want to go anywhere where that thing be hanging out at. I mean, if you got to go somewhere like the grocery store or the gas station, put some gloves on, have some sanitizer ready. Don't track those germs from the pump or anything else back into your vehicle. Watch how you grab the shopping carts. What is wrong with people? And then watch the people in Publix. They don't even have a water bucket when they clean the shopping carts. They take one rack, or they have a water bucket, but the water bucket is sat there and used for the next 2 hours until it's drained and dry. But they keep sticking the rag in the water bucket that's got all the germs that they just took off the shopping carts, and they take that thing and wipe it and wipe every shopping cart with the same thing, and they ain't putting nothing on it, and it's just nasty. And then, they'll take a pure good shopping cart and say, hold on, wait a minute, let me wipe that. And they take the germed rag. One day I had a Publix manager come and watch what their employee was doing, and they justified it. And I said, forget it. This is Publix. What is wrong with you all? That's why I say put your gloves on. Watch where you grab your shopping cart. People are still putting their children in the shopping carts. But anyway, we're talking to the church right now. Come on, church, let's keep talking because I got some business to tell you all. Listen. God says this is not a season where businesses will be blossoming and blooming, and some will, but those are the exceptions. But most businesses are not even going to recover. So preachers should be telling people how to live and how to budget their money and how to, instead of give me whatever you got left. Give me whatever you got on the top. God will do the rest. You just wait a minute, preacher. Why don't you all live from God? Stop living from the pockets of the people and you live from God. That's what I'm doing. No, you're not. You're living from the people. The Bible said it's not even faith. Why? Because it says, if I see something and I can get it, that's not faith. Faith is when you don't see and then you apply it and wait on it to come. You can see what people make. You can see who's in front of you. You can see what certain people got just based upon how they live and how they drive. You just pulling from what you see. That's not faith. It's people's faith when they give up all they got and that's all they got. And you sit there and take it. And then when it doesn't turn, when it doesn't flip, their money doesn't flip. Then you say it must be with you. The problem lies with you. When the prophecy doesn't come to pass, well, see, the prophecy lied with you. I don't believe that God gives prophecy, and if you do these things, then it'll happen. No, that's your back door escape from it if it don't happen like you claim it will. We gonna move on. Tricky. This is not a period for personal greed. God says personal greed will have no place in this period, though people will continue to be greedy. He said the greed of the people will continue to be on display, but their greed is going to cost them. You preachers who are still being greedy, you're still begging, you're still playing all these trick games. Listen, you is going to cost. God says whatever people will gain in their greed will be lost due to their greed. Whatever people will gain in their greed will be lost due to their greed, for greed will have no place during this season. He said this is not a season to take advantage of anyone, yet church folk are still taking advantage. He says this is not a season to be taking advantage of anyone. Twice he said that to me. He said this is not a season that anyone wants to be taking advantage of anyone. He says taking advantage of anyone during this season will be costly. People who take advantage of others during this season will suffer great loss. He says the loss will be great. So whatever you gain by way of your greed will be lost due to your greed. Understand that. God says in this season, no one will be saved through their influence. So church folk, whatever influence you thought you had before this pandemic season, it will not be able to save you, sir or ma'am. No one will be saved either because of their riches. He said this is not a season of exemption. So all of you church folks who keep thinking you're exempt from everything, all of you church folk who think because you are so-called the ecclesia, the so-called called out ones, that, you know, the plight of many will not fall upon you. Well, it's strange that the virus itself keeps falling upon you. Church, this is not a season of exemption, God says, but rather this is a season where everyone is subject to the events of this season. He says no one is exempt from this season, church. No one is exempt in this season, church. Everyone within reach during this season, church. Everyone is subject to the events of this season, church. Listen, and I ain't talking about four walls, okay? The church is not exempt from this season, God says. The church is not excused from the events of this season. God says, in fact, the church's elitism is on trial. The church's elitism is on trial. Now, the question would be for some, or perhaps many, is, well, what is elitism? Because I don't understand what elitism is. Elite means a group or class of persons considered to be superior to others because of their intelligence or their social standing or their wealth. Sound just like the church. Elite means the best or most skilled members of a group. There's the church. The most powerful, there's the church. Rich, there's the church. Or educated, there's the church, even if they just think so. Members of a group or a community, etc. It's a group of persons exercising authority within a larger group. There it is. There it is. There's the church. Authority of high birth or social position. I'm birth of the very seed of God. I am better than all. We are the light of the world. To be elite means to be people of the highest social level, the best, the most important people within a society. You listen to the church and you think that that's not what they believe. All right. So elitism means the belief that certain persons or members of certain groups deserve favored treatment by virtue of their superiority, as in their intelligence or their social standing or their wealth. Elitism is the belief that society should be governed by a select group of gifted and highly educated individuals. Do you know that's what the church believes? That they're supposed to govern every other sector of society because they're the gifted and highly educated ones? Do you know that's what racism basically is? It's stating that we're better than you, we're more superior than you, and we have a greater social standing, greater wealth, greater superiority, and greater intelligence than you do. Elitism is the pride or awareness of being one of an elite group. Elitism is control, rule, or domination by the members of an elite. Elitism is the practice of or belief in rule by an elite consciousness of membership. I belong to the church, or in allegiance to a select group. It's the attitude that government should be by those who consider themselves superior to others by virtue of intelligence, social status, or greater accomplishment. The church feels, and the church has the attitude that government should be run by those, the church, who the church considers themselves superior to others. Elitism is the belief or practice that government should be by a self-appointed group. There it is, the church, who consider themselves superior to those governed by virtue of their higher birth. We're born of God. We're born of the righteous and holy seed of God. The attitude that society should be governed by an elite group of individuals. That is the church. Well, since church, you consider yourselves as the elite. This is what God says. The church's elitism. I didn't call you the elites. God did. The church's elitism is on trial. The church's elitism is being tried. The church's elitism is on display. The church's elitism will be displayed before all, in the open, that is. The church's elitism will be put to shame because your elitism will show itself to be non-existent. You will be put to shame. God says the church is beginning to feel, F-E-E-L, the rift of this period. A rift. Rift. It's a gap or break in something where it has split apart. God says the church, and this was on March the 29th, he says the church is beginning to feel, F-E-E-L, the rift, that gap, that break in something where it has been split apart. It's a space made by splitting apart. It's a serious disagreement that disrupt good relations. It's a break in friendly relations. It's a breach, a gap that results when somebody or something leaves. Is it that God is saying the church is feeling the rift that is occurring now because the church doors were at that time getting ready to close and they were going to be separated from their relationships, from their extramarital affairs and their other rendezvous and all of that? God says the church is beginning to feel the rift of what is just the beginning of what will be. He said this epidemic, and at the time I was seeing, I believe that this was still March the 29th. And at this time, I don't know if I understood this virus to be a pandemic or not. But if something is within a particular sector or region, it's called more of an epidemic. I think that's the way that they medically define an epidemic versus a pandemic. He was saying this epidemic within the church, but it's a pandemic in that it's throughout the world. But because we're isolating the church right now and just dealing with the church, this epidemic, or you can keep it as a pandemic, will not spare the church. Somehow the church feels as though it will be spared from everything that ever hits this earth. Because greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world, and no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And the thief comes not but for to steal, kill, and destroy. And whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you should loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And is there anything too hard for God? And with God, nothing is impossible. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. We use all of these verses, and yet God says, and then the church won't even be spared from this. He said, this epidemic will continue to spread throughout the church. Do you know since March the 29th, it has continued to spread throughout the church heavy? Both the rich and the poor, the young and the old will continue to disappear. The rich and the poor, the young and the old will continue to disappear. God says the church is not the protector. Somehow the church makes you feel that they'll protect you, and this is your protection. God says the church is not the protector. He said the church cannot render the protection necessary for this pandemic season. He says the church cannot protect. The church cannot deliver. The church cannot save anyone. He says that no one will be saved by the church, but yet you keep seeing, just like a crackhead or someone who's addicted to crack cocaine, they just keep showing up at the crack house. They just keep showing up when the last rock was smoked. They can't help but return back to their source. The church has been the source of the people for so long. The people are nothing but spiritual crack addicts. They're stuck. They're meth addicts. Meth doesn't just, make you woozy or whatever. Meth makes you delusional. Do you know when you become delusional? When you believe in the illusion that is being presented to you. Meth presents to you a bunch of illusionary thoughts, visions, scenes that are not actually there. But for the one on meth, it is there. The church has rendered so many meth-like mythologies, such as all of this tithe and offering and all of these other type ways of gouging from the people. I know that's touching, but I'm going to say it. And God knows how to stop me if I'm wrong for saying it. And I don't believe I'm wrong for saying it at all, because I know it's God pointing these things out to me. Now, you feel that it's God who's pointing you to those things. That's between you and God, period. You peddle what you peddle, and I'm going to peddle what I'm peddling in relation to what I heard, period. That is what it is. To each his own. And if you're right, you'll be okay. If you're wrong, you might be gone. The way this thing is going. Anyway, okay, all right, watch this here. The church cannot deliver. No one will be saved by the church. The church will not be able to save itself. Do you know God told me this on March the 29th? And right now you see that the church has yet, in October of 2020, has yet to be able to save itself. He said the church will not be able to deliver itself, and you have not, church. You can't even deliver yourself from your own self-confined, self-incarcerated beliefs. You're just stuck. You're not moving. You're not progressing. You're not going anywhere. You're not even a living, breathing organization anymore. Whatever you do breathe, it's just regurgitated breath, and everybody is regurgitating each other's breath, and you all smell like each other. You know how your breath smell like Samson-like when you're a baby? Your breath smell like the church. All of you smell like the systems you belong to. You just smell each other. You just smell each other. You just smell like each other. The church is going under, God says. The church is going under, just like many of the other industries of our societies. He says that the church will suffer the same fate as many of the other industries in our societies. He says during this season, this is when, now remember, this is March 29th. If you all begin to look at your, you know what? I won't even tell this one. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will. I will. But in the next one, I may give you some examples. God began to tell me, and I began to tell my family members this in March when he told me this. I know I told my father, I told my sister, I told a cousin of mine, I think I told my father-in-law, I told several people, okay? Anyway, God says during this season, bishops will begin to disappear, and they did. Bishops will begin to suffer the same plight as their parishioners, and they did. By the tens, by the dozens, by the 20s. Yes, bishops. People in church leadership will be removed from this earth in numbers as great as their followers, and it has been happening. Those ministers, those evangelists, those who are apostles, pastors, they all began to disappear in numbers as great as the followers. How was I supposed to know that? Only by God. And it began to happen. And this was on March 29th that God stated it to me. Now you see where dozens and dozens and dozens of, I admonish you. Maybe I won't even have to cover it. I admonish you to go and Google pastors and bishops who have died during the pandemic or because of the virus. You will be amazed. And then churches whose members have died due to the virus, due to the pandemic. You will see the numbers, the greatness of numbers that's going uncovered. Churches will be plundered, God says. Pews will be emptied, and they began to be. Now, how was I supposed to know that pews were going to be emptied? Because God said it. Pulpits will be swept and left standing, and they were. But this is not just for this season. Churches are going to be plundered beyond this season. Pews will be emptied beyond this season. Pulpits will be swept and left standing beyond this season. He said to me, pulpits will be vacant even beyond this season. And the pulpits became vacant. But on March the 29th, I did not see that. I didn't know that was coming. I had just come into the understanding maybe 12 days prior that, whoa, all the stuff God was saying to me was regarding right now. I didn't realize that. But anyway, he says pulpits will be vacated, and we see that they have been, but this is going to be beyond this season. People will leave their ministries. People will leave their ministries. They'll be removed from their ministries. And you see and you will hear of people leaving the ministry and being removed from their ministries. God says people will begin to flood the internet. Watch this here. Do you remember when the pandemic season began? Once the churches started closing, they started trying to figure out, what do we do now? What do we do next? And people were telling people to go online and start this and start that. And God said to me, people will begin to flood the internet, but their attempts will fail. They won't succeed. They will not succeed. They will not be permitted to plunder the internet. God says they will not be permitted to pollute the internet with what they have plundered and polluted the church with. God says the internet will not become the church. He says the internet will not become the modern day church. He says the internet will not be able to sustain the greed of the church. He says the internet will not be able to benefit the greed of the church. He says even those who are already on the internet with their greed will be taken in this period. They will be swept away in their greed. He says only those who are true to ministry will be kept in ministry. Only those who are true to their ministry will reach those through the internet. He said the internet will be for the true at heart. The internet will be sacred. He said the internet will be a sacred place of reach. It will be sacred for those who are to reach others through the internet. God says this is a period of the internet. This is a period for those who are supposed to be on the internet. He said the internet will serve its purpose through this season and even beyond this season. If you're supposed to be out there and you're supposed to be doing this here, you will be out there because God's going to make it where you are. But if you aren't supposed to be out there, and if your motive and your intentions are not right for being out there, well, first of all, since you don't want to get caught up on taking advantage of others, it's probably good that you're not on the internet, that you're not pushed to be on the internet. Anyway, those who are supposed to be there will be there. I will say this, 2 years ago, really 3 years ago, 2017, actually in 2012, I began to realize that, you know what, God told me in 2012 or 2013, maybe 2013, God began to tell me, look, I want you to begin recording. I want you to begin podcast. I did not want to learn that stuff. It was so much stuff I had to learn, so much reading. I never dealt with audio and video, and here I was. I had to sit and learn audio and video and cable, and it just made me sick. Microphones, headphones. I had to learn these things. I wanted to spend that time learning revelation and truths and deep things of God, but I had to pull aside in order to learn that stuff. I got so tired. I recorded maybe 50, maybe 60 recordings at that time, but it never went beyond the house. I never could. I purchased all of these items, thousands of dollars of stuff, and I purchased software, and I purchased website stuff, website building. I purchased books to read. I purchased different accounts with HostGator and all of this other stuff. And I'm just doing all kind of stuff, and I could not get this thing right. I just did not understand it all. And after maybe 8 months, I just said, man, forget this. I can't do it. God, maybe I miss you. And I left it alone, but I never got rid of the stuff, though many times I wanted to. I bought special desks, special mic stands, mics. I bought software. I bought computer. I did everything. Man, I did so much. I spent so much money, and I couldn't get it. Well, what it was that God, I was not missing God. It was just that it wasn't fully time for me to go. So I purchased a building. I had a building purchase, and I soundproofed the building, all the entire ceiling, all along the walls. It was a nice place. It was so soundproof. Everything I said was just dead sounding. It was that dead. Nothing carried. Everything said, when I would be in that room, if I said nothing carried, it would say nothing carried. Because there was no sound. It closed out all noise, all vibrations, all reverbs. There was just nothing there. And I liked that, but I couldn't get anywhere. And then it wasn't until 2017 when I purchased another studio, much bigger than what I had. And I purchased it for one thing, and I found myself turning it into another thing. And before I knew it, I had gone in the other building, and I had taken all of that stuff out and brought it over to my new building, and I began to get rid of things in my new building to set up a whole studio within this one. And everything worked well. But then I was like, okay, now God, now how do I? And then God began to talk to me and tell me, you need to do this and you need to do that. And listen, stay with what you're doing. Continue what you're doing. This is going to be helpful. You're going to need this. People are going to need this. You need to do what you're doing. People are depending on what you're doing. And I was going through the fact of all of my kids being in the military, and now, you know, I'm trying to find myself, and God, what do I do beyond this point? I raised the kids, I homeschooled them, I did what needed to be done, and now I prepared them for the military, and I got them all in the military, and now they're there. But God, now I'm left behind, and I'm lost, and I don't know what to do, and I just don't feel. And my kids were like, Daddy, you're going to have to find something to do to make your time worth it. And I wanted to kill myself. I felt empty. I felt used and abused. I felt lost. I felt like, God, I have no purpose now. I have no this. I have no that now. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere without my family. I would always bring my family on traveling tours. We would go so many places. We spent so much money traveling, me trying to show them things and help them to experience things and to level off the fact that we live in a rural area and they didn't grow up in the city and all. And I wanted them to experience the things that I experienced when I was young. And I loved bringing them to South Florida. They loved Florida. They loved the beaches. They loved the pools. They loved it all. They loved Disney World. They loved it, loved it, loved it. We all loved it. They loved all the choices of food and everything, the different nationalities and all. They loved all of that. But when they left, I had nothing. I knew nothing. All I had was my studio, and I was not happy. And God began to talk to me in 2017 and told me I need to keep doing this. I need to keep doing this. And then in 2018, he was telling me the importance of this. And in 2019, he really beat me good regarding it, telling me you're going to need to do this. And then he says, people are waiting for this to come, for you to build this. And people are waiting to be, you're waiting to be heard. There's an audience for you. There's an audience for you. He said, just begin to buy. Don't worry about the cost. Just begin to buy. And I spent tens of twenties of thousands of dollars, well beyond twenties of thousands of dollars, doing what I was doing, still not seeing anything. But I'm doing it. And then I'm doing the recordings, and then I go back and I reestablish all the accounts that I had for the different website and everything else, and the different monthly costs for the different sites that I have and the different accounts that I have for podcasting and all of this stuff. And it's expensive monthly. And I do this out of my pocket. And then we end up in the pandemic season. And then God gets to this point where we just left off right here, where it says that the internet is going to be the way for the people. This is where it's going to. This is how it's going to unfold and how it's going to occur. And then he says those who are supposed to be on the internet will be on the internet. Well, I know that's me. Why? Because he told me to put forth this stuff well in advance. And I did. I purchased all the items. I have so many items, switches and all. Microphones, the best of microphones that are on the market. I don't believe in cheap stuff. I don't believe in buying cheap stuff. I don't believe in buying the cheapest thing and saying, oh, well, as long as the message gets out there. No, I believe in putting forth whatever it is that God has put in my hand to be able to afford. So I put these things forth, and that's what I have put forth, all of these things. So I have the quality things that are set forth to go in order to give you quality, to give the listeners quality, whether it's video or audio. I do want to get some new cameras now, but I have great cameras, but I probably want to upgrade a little more. I want to be a little more advanced than what I am, because things keep advancing, even though the internet cannot take but a certain level of upload, a certain type of upload, a certain quality upload. The highest right now is 1080p. Some are still working on 720p, but I want to go up. Even though I have 4K cameras, I want to do a little more, just a little more. But anyway, what I'm saying is, if you would listen to God and had the church of listen to God, you would have transformed and you would have transferred with the shift, perhaps. Or maybe it's like Judas, you were coming to your declared end anyway. Or maybe it was like Pharaoh, your heart was hard in church where you couldn't do but what you did and you were coming to an end anyway. Whatever it is, I would say to people, if you know that God is calling you to the internet, if you know that that's where God is calling you, you need to begin to read and learn and study all the audio and video, the codings and all. You study wireless, you study all the wires and gauges and connectors regarding the internet. You need to study what Facebook's requirements are, YouTube's requirements are, wherever you uploading this stuff at. A lot of people on Zoom, you need to learn that and get those videos in you. If it is for you, and if God is talking to you, then you'll be there. I'm proof of that. Anyway, let's continue going, because church, I have more for you, a good bit more for you. So let's just keep going, and I'll deal with you all on the next one. All right. Thank you.